please subscribe and don't forget to press the bell icon to get notified whenever we upload a new video.
I have with me Dr. Y.V. Reddy, former Reserve Bank of India governor, who finished his term just 10 days before the Lehman bankruptcy. Dr. Reddy, thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you, thank you.
So before I let you speak, I want to tell you an anecdote which you may or may not remember. Sometime in, I think, March or April 2008, you suddenly called a few of us business journalists. RBI called us with about 1 hour's notice. That was the first time when RBI did not give us any tea or biscuits at the press conference. We were just made to sit in a room. You rushed in and you spoke to us for exactly 5 minutes. You said bad things are going to happen, very bad things. Warn people that the crisis is just beginning. That was the first time we got a sense of something bad is going to happen. But we still didn't realize that, the market, the Sensex would crash from 21,000 all the way to 7,000. What made you call us and warn us? When did you smell that 2008 is a bad year?
I'll do a bit of history. Actually, I became sensitive to the impact of global factors on a domestic economy when I was ED in the IMF.
When you were ED in the IMF, that is 2002?
To 2003, I saw the suffering of Turkey, Argentina, Brazil, Mexico.
Okay.
So therefore, from then on, I felt that one of the most important things for emerging market economies is to be very conscious of the risks from the global economy.
Okay.
And this, after I joined as governor, somewhere around 2000, in a couple of years, I realized that our EMIS as a whole, there are global imbalances and they should be warned. Okay. So actually, I gave a talk in Paris on the subject. So
in 2005?
2005.
Okay.
Banque de France.
Okay.
So the global imbalances and impact on emerging market economies.
Okay. Okay.
And then, so that's when I introduced the concept of national balance sheets. And now corporate sector, financial sector can be over-leveraged, and India and some of the emerging market economies are not. So one is the sensitivity. Second is a feeling of discomfort about what is happening. Even in 2005, it's a slight discomfort.
Okay.
And I think by 2006, again in September 2006, I said that there is excess liquidity, and I think the word I used is there a dark future or something like that.
Okay. No, I remember you said India, in one of the monetary policies, maybe late 2007 or early 2008, maybe January 2008, is India overheating? You made that remark.
No, that was essentially that was essentially the Indian phenomena.
Okay.
But partly because it was the global economy, global capital flows are pushing us.
Okay.
Overheating is happening also because...
Yeah, because we had a flood of flows.
Yes, so that was happening.
But when did you guess? I mean, you must be meeting a lot of central bankers at BIS or in other fora. At what point were global central bankers uncomfortable about the imbalance?
I would say in 2007, when the housing bubble came, and Fannie Mae
and Freddie Mac.
And when they started getting into trouble, and when I was discussing with the governors of the central banks, I sensed, of the advanced economies, and we used to meet often, I sensed that they were worried that there is a problem, and they are worried that they'll make a policy mistake by doing something about it. Both from an ideology point of view. But I could see that. But my problem was not so much their
problem.
Whatever their problem, but how the result affect me.
Okay. But when did you get the sense?
But I got a definite feeling that something is going to seriously happen soon after this housing problem came in 2007, by 2007 end. And I felt that we have to be prepared. And I gave a speech, and this is the background perhaps for my warning you. On 3rd January 2008, I spent 3-4 hours on 2 sentences. How to say that something very bad is going to happen, the capital flows may go back, and we should be prepared for that. So internally we got prepared for it, but that communication nobody picked up. Nobody picked up.
Yeah, January 2008, I think it was a speech in Hyderabad.
Yes.
No, nobody of us understood.
And so I was struggling how to tell, but not inject fear or something like that. But anyway,
how did you prepare in 2008? How did you prepare the Indian economy? I remember that there was a lot of pressure because the Fed had cut rates a couple of times. In January of 2008, there was pressure on you to cut rates, but you refused. From Jan to June, how were you preparing for the crisis?
I wouldn't say Jan to June as such, but the other problem which we seldom notice is that the time when the oil prices were shooting up.
Yes.
Very high
150,
oil prices.
yes.
Very high oil prices. That's one problem, one issue. And to face it, we required more capital flows, and people were keen to get that. So it's a complex factor. And also, in the country, politically and ideologically, they never imagined like having anything like excess capital flows, excess growth, overheating.
Yes, we were unprepared.
So it was a battle of thinking, battle of ideology, not just like the Government of India or Reserve Bank of India.
Okay.
But fortunately, I think we had Prime Minister, Finance Minister, others who could at least, they didn't agree, but they allowed us to talk. And but let me tell you where I was when I was almost sure that it would happen is by June, July,
Okay.
2008, and that's where in Manchester I simply said that at that time we used to call it turbulence.
Yes.
It was turbulence.
Financial turbulence.
Financial turbulence. So I said that financial turbulence will become a crisis.
Yes.
So I think by June, July, I felt that.
Yeah, our inflation hit double digits in July.
Yes.
And then I remember Dr. Subbarao was the finance secretary, and he said monetary policy is the first line of defense. And the next time you raised rates to 9%.
At that time, actually, two steps. One step, a few months before, I didn't want to raise, saying that we have risen enough. But in the next round, and I had to raise.
Yes.
Though I didn't want, but next time I said you have to continue. She wants to start a process. There's no point in doing it once and getting it back.
Yeah. Okay, so let me come to the way India reacted. Does it look like India overreacted? Everybody cut rates. So even we have to bring our rates down to, 1% and 2%. Did we overreact? We went down in repo rate all the way to 3/4.
I think at that point of time, we wanted to be perhaps more careful and not, so in some senses I would say that in such a crisis, overreacting is better than underreacting.
Okay.
But that's the beginning.
Yes.
But very quickly it should have been possible to assess that we're not that much affected or whatever it is. But even when the reality of the extent of damage was evident, I think we found it convenient to continue. So on all three fronts, that monetary fiscal policy, monetary policy, regulatory forbearance, all three of them in retrospect, I think they were excessive, and that's secondly, they're prolonged, and they're uncoordinated.
Okay, yeah, uncoordinated. Let me remind you of another advice you gave me. This time you were not governor. This was, I think, early 2009. I'm not very sure, or maybe late 2008, December. We met at some press conference where you were also present, some event, maybe a Reserve Bank event. And you said, can you stop calling it a crisis? We are not in a crisis. The more you use the word crisis, the more the government will blow up the fiscal deficit, and they will be happy to do it because they are going into elections in 3 months. So, you clearly said that the government will blow the fiscal deficit. You could see it at that time that the fisc will overreact more to its advantage because they were going into elections.
See, I think all research has shown, apart from my own practical experience, that just before the elections, the government expenditure shoots up.
Yes.
And now if you give an intellectual excuse to do that, and that to a global factor, they'll just lap it up. And by then, I think indirectly, perhaps what I was trying to hint was that we were too keen to fall in line with the global trend rather than accept that we were not that badly affected. So that was an illustration, but overall also, I think we did pay a price a little later, of course.
Okay, that's what I wanted to come to. Would you say that the NPA crisis and the balance of payments crisis, the balance of payments crisis of 2013, and then the NPA crisis, which is currently underway, is to some extent, our sequel to the global crisis?
Let me put it this way. There was a problem of everything delayed, let me put it this way. First, there was excessive regulatory forbearance.
Forbearance.
It was excessive to start with. Second, it was prolonged. Three, when it had to be recognized, there was delayed recognition. There was a delayed recognition
Of the NPAs.
of the NPAs.
Okay.
And so it is when the recognition came, it had already been accumulated. So whenever in the case of NPAs, each year you get accumulated. Imagine for 4 or 5 years, NPAs accumulated are shown in 1 year. So actually the NPA numbers which you see give an exaggerated picture because that's really accumulated NPAs.
It should have been divided by 5 years.
Yes.
Okay.
In fact, even more, because penalty will...
But looks like India was not the only one which went into excess monetary, fiscal and regulatory excesses. It looks like even China, other emerging markets also seem to have done that.
No, I think if I am not mistaken, the other economies, they got into trouble subsequently more due to the commodity prices.
Okay.
Not so much on the
Monetary and
excesses.
fiscal excesses.
Yeah, not so much on the...
All right, so I want to look at cures now. We need to take a commercial break, but I want to come back and discuss whether the global monetary and financial system has found enough cures for the imbalances that caused the Lehman crisis. We are discussing in the 10th anniversary of the Lehman crisis, whether the world has cured itself of the imbalances that caused the Lehman crisis in the first place. Well, Dr. Reddy, the cures. A lot of acts were passed and banks were asked to reduce their prop book, in fact, not trade on their prop book at all. Many of the derivatives were cancelled. Do you think the global financial system took enough steps?
I think there are 3 dimensions, I would put it this way. One is the money. The other is the regulation of the financial entities. Third is the global financial architecture. Let us look at all these 3. These are the basically, apart from political economy factors, these are the 3. So as far as the global monetary system, it's a non-system.
Okay.
It is US dollar, US could print, and US dollar supply is determined by the US interest, but it affects the whole world. Has it changed? China is trying to question, but it's nowhere near replacing it as such at the moment. So therefore, substantively, as far as monetary system is concerned, it is more or less what it was before. More threatened than before, but squarely on the non-system continues. Second is the financial sector regulation. Now, as far as the financial sector regulation is concerned, regulation continues to be national. Finance continues to be global.
Okay.
That dichotomy is continuing.
But that will never be resolved.
If that is not resolved, that will always undermine the policy space available for the countries. Secondly, the balance sheets of these large financial houses cut across nations.
Yes.
And to that extent, they can undermine the policies itself. Third, of course, is the finance is globalized, but capital is globalized, labor is not.
Yes.
So that gives a bigger asymmetry.
That gives the emerging economies like us a disadvantage.
And that's the second part. So where not much has happened. But the effect of this in terms of inequality is we found expression and nationalism in the national politics. Third, the global financial architecture. The global financial architecture, has IMF changed much? Has World Bank changed much?
No.
Nothing. So what has changed? There are 2, 3 things that have changed.
Which is?
The first thing that has changed is the euro is no longer as important for the global economy.
Yes.
In fact, Asia has become more important. Developing countries have become more important. And the differentiation between developing and the developed has disappeared. Now it's a spectrum. Second, the dichotomy between finance and real has increased. The real economy is not improving as much, whereas the financial markets
sector is doing very well.
The liquidity conditions are continuing to be as loose as ever, except that there is even more fear of annoying the markets. And in some cases, the central bank balance sheet also will be affected. So
regulatory capture is complete.
Yes. In fact, I call it comprehensive regulatory capture.
Okay. In one of your speeches.
Yes, in one of my speeches. So in terms of the big problems which caused the crisis, they have not become less, they have become bigger problems.
Oh.
And now we are entering a new bipolar world very clearly. You have got China and USA.
United States.
And they represent to the conflicting ideologies in some senses. China believes in state-driven economy. Yes. America believes in market-driven economy. And China is strong in real sector. America is strong in financial sector. China believes in nationalism. America, till now so far. So you have this
contrast.
Yes, contrasting idea. But more important, they're rivals. But there's a difference between their rivalry and the rivalry between Russia and America before.
Okay, okay.
Because Russia and America were two different worlds. Whereas here, what China does affects America, and what America does affects China.
They are deeply interrelated.
Yes.
Interconnected.
So it's a bipolar world where the leaders of each world are interdependent.
Okay.
That makes it very difficult for the rest of the people.
No, but therefore they will also not nuke each other, with their policies.
Yes, but the point is that those tensions will be transmitted to the rest of the population.
Okay, okay.
So what I'm saying is that we are, let me give you one simple example. The debt sustainability of different countries, especially smaller countries, African countries, requires information about the liabilities.
Yes.
Right, external liabilities. Now, many of the Chinese large projects, cross-country projects, are bilateral.
Yes.
And they don't, there's not enough information about them.
How much is the debt?
Yes. So there are two things that are happening. The debt sustainability itself is uncertain for some of the developing countries.
Okay.
The IMF World Bank itself doesn't know how much it is. Second, and more importantly, China, its wealth, which used to be in financial instrument dollar denominated, now it is in countries where the return is less, they are illiquid, but there's a political advantage of being there, and insurance against the dollar dominance.
Okay.
See, the point is, if China is having its external wealth entirely in dollars, their capacity to quarrel with America will be less now.
Less. That's
so, in fact, many of these things are happening, and India is very important in this situation.
Yes,
because it's a large economy.
Yeah, and China is our immediate neighbor.
Yes.
So,
and in some senses we depend on the financial market, definitely, but on the real sector we can import quite a lot from China. I think we have to really look at our positioning in this new bipolar world. How do we position ourselves in trade and in finance?
Okay. That requires a lot of thinking.
Yes.
But I want to come back to Lehman, since this is trying to understand the Lehman crisis and its consequences. There was an article in Bloomberg where the author very effectively argues that the reason why perhaps Trump, or one of the big reasons why Obama lost and Trump won, was because no Wall Street banker served prison term, in spite of the fact that that crisis was entirely created by the bankers, by those fancy derivatives, by completely undercapitalizing their institutions. What should we learn from that? I mean, we need to punish. Is that a lesson that we should learn?
No, the punishment is warranted on 2-3 grounds. One is the way the rest of the economy has been affected. That's one part of it.
People lost jobs.
But more important, even when irregularities and virtual criminality has been proven, that was settled with the money of the banks.
Yes.
No individual paid, and even the bank, and even the truth is not known. Because it's without...
It's compounding.
It's compounding without establishing the real, but the devastation caused. So I think that is, that's also, not only that no punishment was given, but it's reflective of the power
of the financial system.
Okay. See, for somebody, some group of people who have made money, number one, and who are affected so many others, and who are plainly responsible in any other avocation, and not one of them has been seen. So I think that it's not so much that no punishment was made, but on the other hand, they are thriving.
Yes. They are benefiting from the resurgence of Wall Street.
And continuing to benefit. So in a way, the question today is GDP growth, revival of USA, for whom? Revival for whom?
Yes, that's a genuine anger. Do you think, therefore, when we are looking at our NPA problem, punishment should be a part of it? I mean, I think India is, personally I'm glad that the insolvency code at least for the top marquee cases, has ensured that the defaulters don't get their companies back. Do you think that was the right way to go?
I think definitely one thing is clear. The Indian system required a shock treatment. Okay. So in very broad terms, it required a shock treatment, it required a structural change. The structural change in insolvency code is a good structural change, but it's not complete.
It's not complete.
One. Public sector banking system is still not done. So in that sense, but there is one part of it, the other part of it is necessary, essential, urgent. The other thing is the punishing part of it.
Yes.
I think there it's good that it has been done, but I think that should not be overdone.
Yeah, we see a lot of, well, investigative witch hunt, if you please, against bankers as well. You know, it probably some uninvolved bankers who were just present there are also getting caught.
In some senses, I think it's a systemic problem in the sense, even your honest people, the system the system was such that you could not survive unless you followed a norm, and the norm was the board, the board.
Yes.
And how are the board constituted? It's the board that leads you.
Yes.
And the board was constituted with different...
but people who were sympathetic to the big business houses.
To a particular thing. So in a way what I am saying is, if there are many bankers who were given loans, not for their own benefit, but that's the board wanted it.
Okay.
So you'll find a signature of an honest banker and a bad loan.
Yes.
Because if that is the totality of this framework and the culture of the board.
Okay. So we need to change the way banks are constituted.
And therefore, when you are judging the individual actions of the bankers, in general, it's a reflection of the board. So only those who have really made money, you can really call them guilty.
Yes.
in substance.
Fair enough. Well, at least the Prevention of Corruption Act has been amended to that effect. Yes, retrospectively. It's not amended retrospectively. It is amended prospectively. Yes, there still can be some innocence. Finally, sir, do you smell a crisis round the corner? Because all global markets are doing well. Do you think they can continue like this, or do you think imbalance can hit?
You see, if the problems have not been solved of the last crisis, and we are still not clear what is the new normal, then how can we say what's happening is sustainable? So whether there is crisis or not, I think the quote-unquote, the recovery that we are seeing is a blip. And we should keep our fingers crossed.
Yes, as it has been said, nothing is settled unless it is settled right. So probably we have to be very cautious, as you said.
The problem is we still don't know what is right.
Okay.
That's what the post-truth era is where we have arrived.
Thank you very much, Dr. Reddy. You leave us with more questions, but then the world is left with more questions. Thank you very much, sir.